Hi, and welcome back. As you can see behind me, we've been transported from the heath of Scotland to a castle, perhaps one much like where the play of Macbeth took place. We're looking at Macbeth as a character who falls from greatness into ruin, a character that falls from the state that human beings ought to be in, the natural state of happiness and joy like a child, to the state of damnation and ruination. And here in Act 2, we see him debating whether or not to kill the king, Duncan. He's been fired by the three witches who have flamed his ambition to become king, but in order to become king, he must kill the king that is currently alive. But in choosing to kill his king, Macbeth begins to suffer a splitting of self. One could say that this is an element of the demonic, of damnation. It is a splitting of self, not knowing oneself. It is a struggle between the rational side and the base side, or the good side and the evil side, the Gollum and the Smeagol side, to use the example from Tolkien. And in this particular speech that Macbeth makes here in Act 2, he is approaching the chamber of Duncan, ready to kill the king, and he sees a phantasm, an illusion, a ghost, if you will. This is in Act 2, Scene 1. Is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat, oppressed brain? This image of Macbeth seeing a dagger as he approaches the chamber of Duncan, ready to kill Duncan, is emblematic of that splitting. It's a dagger that, as he says, marshallest me the way that I was going. But you could also see it as a dagger splitting him in two. His self being cut into two different people that war with each other inside of himself. A sort of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, or a good Macbeth and an evil Macbeth, or a saved Macbeth and a damned Macbeth. One way or the other, he knows not himself anymore. And he says this after he has killed Duncan. He even says this very thing. Here's the text. In Act 2, Scene 2, to know my deed, 'twere best not know myself. Wake Duncan with thy knocking, I would thou couldst. To know my deed, 'twere best not to know myself. To know what I have done in killing Duncan, it would be better not to know who I am anymore. And because he loses who he is, he loses his self and the purpose of what he is, he also is unable to sleep and to think about salvation anymore, or to be at peace. So Macbeth has made the decision to kill Duncan, a very bad decision, the killing of the king. It represents, to some degree, the killing of authority, the killing of nobility, because Duncan's a noble king, the killing of a father figure, because Lady Macbeth even says he looked like my father, the killing, if you will, of the God figure, because the king is a parallel to God, being God's anointed servant. In killing the king, Macbeth then finds that he's splitting into two people. And that splitting into two people causes him to be restless, in turmoil, like the waves of the sea, one against the other. And this turmoil prevents him from sleeping, from experiencing the peace and the sleep of daily life, which is itself a parallel to the peace of the afterlife, the requiem aeternam. He says at one point in the text, I can't sleep anymore. Here he is in Act 2, Scene 2. Methought I heard a voice cry, sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep. The innocent sleep, sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care, the death of each day's life, sore labour's bath, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast. And still it cried, sleep no more, to all the house. Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more. One is reminded here of Dante's famous line in Hell, where he says, here one can neither stand, nor lie, nor sit. That in hell there is no rest. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And this image of both fury and sound and at the same time weakness, an inability to lie down or inability to act is very important to the loss of humanity in Macbeth. We see that same kind of loss of humanity in one character, the Hellgate Porter, that occurs in the scene right after Duncan's death. In this scene, we've got an image of both lack of power and also confusion and rest. This is the text. Act 2, Scene 3. The porter says, "Drink, sir, is a great provoker of 3 things. Marry, sir, nose painting, sleep, and urine. Lechery, sir, it provokes and unprovokes. It provokes the desire, but takes away the performance. Therefore much drink may be said to be an equivocator with lechery. It makes him and it mars him, sets him on and takes him off, persuades him and disheartens him, makes him stand to and not stand to, and in conclusion equivocates him in a sleep, and giving him the lie, leaves him." Many people gloss over the Hellgate Porter, but I see this character in Act 2, Scene 3 as being pivotal to the character of Macbeth. Macbeth's decision to kill Duncan, to kill the father figure, has on the one hand set him on so that he's got great ambition driving him on, but on the other hand it's taken away his real power, the power of a real human or a hero to do great deeds. Therefore, his decision to do this evil deed is much like what alcohol, the Hellgate Porter says, does to a person. It gives you this drive and this energy, top of the world. And then on the other hand, it makes you so drowsy you just fall right to sleep. But Macbeth can't sleep, and that's an issue. He has murdered sleep. And consequently, the Hellgate Porter, who lets in the other thanes into the castle, who then discover the murder of Duncan, the Hellgate Porter becomes a pivotal character, something like a character that allows into the consciousness of Macbeth the realization that his life is not going to be the same anymore. He's done a deed that has made him more monstrous, more like a dragon. The character of the Hellgate Porter has suggested to us that drink is a parallel image to the ambition or evil that Macbeth has chosen. In his article, Macbeth and his Porter, Frederick B. Tremblay makes this pretty clear. And I'd like to look just briefly at a section from that article in order to illuminate this idea. Tremblay says, "The Porter's remarks on the effect of drink on lechery stand in a metaphorical relationship to Macbeth himself. The metaphor is not grounded in the literal actions of the two men, but rather in the similarity between the state of mind created by the conjunction of drink and lechery in the Porter and the one created by the interplay of good and evil impulses in Macbeth." What Tremblay is suggesting in his article, and I think is very correct, is that the struggle of good and evil, the two hemispheres of Macbeth, the parts of Macbeth that have been split by that dagger of the mind, are very similar to the interplay of alcohol and lechery. They encourage him, but they also draw him out of being able to act. They make him less than human. Because of his inability to act, he becomes terrified, he becomes scared of things, and he becomes fearful, particularly of good men. And we see this particularly in how he treats his best friend Banquo. Banquo has been with him from the beginning. He was there when the 3 witches at the beginning of the play told Macbeth he was going to be king. But Banquo doubts that Macbeth has gained the kingship rightfully, thinks that maybe Macbeth has gained it by evil actions. And Banquo, in many ways, is the conscience of Macbeth. And therefore, Macbeth finds that he wants to kill Banquo. And this is the text. Act 3, Scene 1. Macbeth says, "To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. 'Tis much he dares into that dauntless temper of his mind, yet the wisdom that doth guide his valor to act in safety. There is none but he whose being I do fear." Notice that Macbeth fears Banquo, but he fears him primarily because Banquo is a good man. Banquo, as it says here, is royal in nature, much that he dares. He has a dauntless temper. He has wisdom that guides his valor. And therefore, he's something of the hero character as well. He's conscious of Macbeth, but he's also the hero of the story. And Macbeth decides, I cannot exist happily as long as Banquo lives, and therefore I have to kill him. I think this is very adept on the part of Shakespeare again because it shows a next stage of evil. When one chooses to do an evil deed, the thing that one has to do is kill the conscience, kill that good side of you, kill the heroic side of you. If you're going to choose to do something that makes you into a dragon, you can't simultaneously be a hero. And consequently, Macbeth chooses to kill Banquo and his son as well, so that they can't threaten him anymore. And he succeeds in killing Banquo, but he doesn't succeed in killing his son, Fleance, who escapes. And the fear of Banquo is so great that later on at a banquet, pun on the word by Shakespeare, at a banquet, the ghost of Banquo shows up. And it so terrifies Macbeth that he acts like a child. He acts like he's drunk. He acts almost in an effeminate way, incapable of action. And everybody is standing around, all his guests are standing around watching him go through this fit as he sees the ghost and no one else does. And they all think, this guy's losing it. But he is losing it. He's losing his humanity and his ability to be truly human, because as he has committed 2 murders now, a murder of ambition and a murder of fear of his best friend, he has made himself more and more like a dragon. That's all we have for this time. We'll see you in the next section.